Hey there everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. Have you ever had a dungeon master that just seems to be gung-ho for your character in Dungeons & Dragons? Well, this next player did. To the post. I'm new to D&D, and it feels like my DM is specifically trying to kill off my characters. By Reddit user, Brie Larston. I'm not sure if I'm being sensitive or not, but I think my DM is trying to kill me. My DM is a longtime D&D player, and started a campaign with 2 relatively new players, because he said he loves helping people learn the game. After they'd been playing for about 6 months, he asked if I wanted to join their game on a trial. My only D&D experience is Baldur's Gate 3, so I know some basic spells, but obviously not how it works outside of that video game. DM helped me make a character who he said would fit nicely in their campaign. We had a first session, and it was really fun. Everyone seemed to like me, and asked me to join permanently. Ever since then, the DM has been trying to kill me. I play a very squishy, high charisma bard. Every enemy only focuses on me. Every time we run into a politician, I will roll above a 20, and it's never high enough to convince them of anything. I have high stealth, and will roll above a 20, and I get caught. I'm constantly getting kidnapped, beaten up, drugged, etc. We decided to play a one-shot with new characters, and I created a cleric necromancer. He created a boss fight with creatures that are impervious to necrotic damage and poison, which are all my spells. I successfully blinded one of them, but then he said, "Actually, they cannot be blinded." We're actually playing right now, and I had to open this tab as the other characters are in the fight because I had to disengage. I've dropped to 1 HP and literally cannot help. I'm so frustrated. I try to do fun improv and always agree with the group because I don't ever want to derail the main story. But I spend every game getting the snot beat out of me. One of them privately DM'd me during this game to ask if I did anything to piss the DM off because of how badly I get attacked. It's just not fun anymore. I'm becoming jaded when my characters are supposed to be nice people, and it's making it hard to roleplay. I am an incredibly new player, and so I can't tell if this is normal. But every fight has enemies that only I cannot hurt. I am always getting kidnapped and failing rolls that are above 20. Is this normal? Or am I too sensitive to play this game? Edit. Some more clarification. I always ask before I roll anything and clarify that it's the right thing to roll, like persuasion versus intimidation. He helped me make my character and approved my stats. It isn't just politicians that I try to convince. That was just the last few examples. I roll an 18 to persuade a guard to let me pass. Nope, he didn't buy it. Now I have to go to jail. I roll a 15 performance check playing my lute in a tavern. They were not impressed. We made no gold. My backstory is that I have an alias with ironclad documentation. Sorry. Immigration didn't buy it. I'm the only party member who can't enter a town and do the quest. Many people say I should just talk to him, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't overreacting before I did. This is my first D&D experience, and I started to wonder if I'm just really bad at it and should quit. Well, first, anything above a 20, or even a nat 20 in D&D, is not an auto-success. But as it sounds, OP is still in low-level D&D, and I would say that those rolls probably should have been successes, depending on who the rolls were against. The deception roll about OP's documents to get into a town where the quest took place really stuck out to me. In my opinion, a good dungeon master does not want to exclude a player in a quest, even if OP would have rolled low in that instance, which they didn't. The DM should have come up with a way for OP's character to join the party instead of having to sit out. Not to mention all the enemies being ones that OP can't do anything against. All of this just sounds to me like the DM is picking on OP for whatever reason. And I know if I was a player at that table seeing this type of thing happening to another player, I would have said something to the DM in defense of OP. So I will tell OP that they aren't doing anything wrong, and to talk to the DM about this targeting. Then, if it doesn't change, well, to try to find a new table to play at, which I know can be hard for a new player. But it's definitely better than what's happening now. Either way, I wish you luck, OP. Now, we move on to a DnD horror story where a player just does not want to answer the call to adventure. To the post. Nah, no thanks. I'll stay home. By Reddit user BJBro396. So, this story takes place during one of my wife's custom self-made world attempts, using 5th edition years ago. Our group was small. Names changed for privacy. Long story short, the world is essentially ruled by dragons, but in secret like a shadow government. Dragons assume mortal forms and hold every position of power after thousands of years ago, erasing themselves from history, purging draconic-like creatures, mainly kobolds and dragonborn and half-dragons, and any literature on them. From the small regional duke, all the way up to gods even, were occupied by dragons. But our story didn't even get to knowing that until a later playthrough with a new group. This particular story is between Simon, myself, Tara, a friend, and John, a friend, plus my wife Kayla. The campaign started out pretty interestingly. We'd been captured and boarded onto a ship bound for a slave market. Myself and Tara orchestrated our escape, barely, from the ship, as it was attacked by something in the sea during a storm. A very high perception earned us a glimpse of something scaled beneath the waves, and as we escaped in the storm on the ship's dinghy, we fade to black, washing up on the shores of a desert continent. It was around this time my wife decided to invite another player, John. John is a pretty atypical nerdy guy. He leaned very heavily into the role-playing aspect of tabletop RPGs, and he rolled up a fledgling wizard that worked in his father's restaurant in the capital. We managed to convince them to join us after seeing them perform some magic. We had a few small quests, kill some desert monsters for hides and meat, and he joined on the condition that we kill extra to supply his father's place with meat. Easily done. Many giant scorpion kills later, we return with a wagon bursting with the stuff. He takes his share home, along with gold from the job that we split with him. And we picked up a plot thread. A serial killer targeting influential people to petrify into art. We decided that we would officially offer John's character a spot adventuring with us. We planned to take out this killer, make the city safe, and that was just a start. He declined to our shock, though we laughed it off as we tried pitching other reasons for him to come. He could send his father fresh and exotic spices, ingredients from around the world, earn money to support this business. He could save up money himself to go to a school to study more about wizardry than the local library's tomes could teach him. Maybe even come with us to advertise and tell the world that the best foods are found in his father's restaurant. But no. He then proceeded to have a literal half-hour-long solo roleplay, out loud, of his character and his father talking or arguing about the invitation to join us, in a stereotypical Middle Eastern accent. John himself is not Middle Eastern, and it was very, very stereotyped. An argument that he lost with himself. Me, Kayla, and Tara were flabbergasted. We broke for the night, and over the next few days, My wife tried to find a way to motivate John's character to set out on an adventure, since the literal plethora of calls for adventure that worked on most people didn't work. She pitched to me a few things. Maybe his father pitches something to him, or maybe his father goes missing mysteriously, leaving behind only a breadcrumb to follow. She pitched this as a possibility to John, and then he lost it in our group chat, telling her she better not touch his dad, that it was messed up, etc. About a day after that, he dropped out, saying it wasn't the kind of group he wanted to join, and it left us all scratching our heads, trying to figure that out. We weren't sure what he expected. TLDR. Friend joins an adventure group with a character that doesn't want to adventure, despite offerings of many in-character rewards or things that would motivate his character. Decides to stay home instead, and quits when the Dungeon Master tries to find a way to forcibly have them leave the nest. Another one of these players that just refused to take the path to join the rest of the players on an adventure. I will never understand people that do this. They join a D&D game, but just have their character refuse to even nibble at the possibility of joining the other characters? Why even play D&D then? Plus, the whole thing with him role-playing with his character's father was a bit weird. I mean, even if there was a character that is part of the player's backstory, usually the DM would assume that role, not the player. And when the DM offered this player all those options of why they should join the rest of the group, he just blows up on them? I would say that the trash took itself out in this case. I mean, what was he expecting? But now, we move on to a story about a dungeon master that doesn't quite get what intimidation does, or even human nature for that matter. To the post. So, the intimidation skill is worthless, apparently. By Reddit user, The Terry Braddock. Not a big horror story, but this moment between a dungeon master and myself some years ago still makes me scratch my head. We had secretly broken into the lab of a mad scientist to retrieve some MacGuffin or another, and we find the cowardly assistant. He's cagey as hell as we question him to where said MacGuffin is being kept. The Dungeon Master says he looks like he's about to alert the guards, so my barbarian rolls to intimidate him. Success. I say, "You're going to stay quiet and tell us where the MacGuffin is right now if you want to leave here with all of your fingers and toes. I have no qualms about harming the lapdog of a scientist with a god complex that experiments on." The Dungeon Master interrupts me, telling me that he responds by attacking me and screaming for the guards. Okay. We end up playing out the encounter and have to fight our way out. While we were killing the bastard, I questioned the DM, asking why he failed my intimidation. DM: "Oh no, you succeeded. You intimidated him. And like anybody, he responded how anyone would when feeling threatened. Fight or flight, you know?" Me: "But I was trying to intimidate him into staying quiet. I succeeded, but he did the opposite of what I was scaring him into doing." DM: "Yeah, no, that's not how people work. When a person is threatened, they default to what they would do when they feel in danger, just like animals do." Me: "Okay, but what's the point of the intimidation skill then?" DM: "What do you mean? It's just for scaring people. It's a pretty worthless skill, honestly. You should just try persuading next time." Yes, of course. My dragonborn barbarian, who grew up in the wastes, should be using his silver tongue and winning smile to charm people into compliance. That's the right move. Sure thing. Years later, I'm still confused by that DMing choice. Yeah, that was a pretty bad call on the Dungeon Master's part there. Intimidation is supposed to be used for making someone do what your character wants them to do, through fear. That whole fight or flight argument was just stupid. I mean, if it were true that whenever people are threatened through being intimidated, then there would be a lot of people dying during being held at gunpoint and such. I mean, just think of any bank robbing scene in any movie. I just think this DM had a planned outcome to this session, and nothing the players did was going to change any of that. But with that said, here is Ziggy to intimidate you into liking the video and subscribing.
Hey you, like the video, or else. Oh, a banana.
Whoa there, Ziggy. We don't want to scare our viewers away. Also, if you would like to help out more directly, I'll make sure to leave the Ko-fi and Ko-fi links in the description. Though, with all that said, let's move on to a story about a dungeon master having to make the hard decision to kick a player out of their Dungeons & Dragons campaign. To the post. I kicked a player, and I feel bad. By Reddit user, Agent Valerian. Okay, so this started a while ago, when the player in question, let's call him Mark, got up in the middle of a session and stormed out after venting his frustration about a fellow player. The problem is that this came out of the blue. Neither I nor the other players knew why he suddenly exploded like that. I later talked to him, and it became apparent that he felt left out. Namely, he said that the other characters were far more involved in the story than his, and his character was only in the background. There was some other stuff too, but that was the gist of it. Now, he hadn't given me a single paragraph of backstory so far, while the other players worked with me to involve their characters. This might be on me, because I required a backstory, but did not enforce it when he didn't provide one. Also, he didn't like his class. I said, okay, rebuild your character, bring me a backstory, and we'll involve him more. He agreed, but told me that he could only give me a backstory in a couple of weeks because of school stuff. He is 18, and the only one still in school in our group. And I said, of course, that's more important. Now, while he said that we could play without him, the next session was going to be very important to the campaign, so I chose to wait. Well, today, I learned that he was starting a new campaign as the Dungeon Master. He started recruiting for that campaign shortly after our talk. I was a bit taken aback and asked him how he had the time to start a whole campaign, but not to write a quick backstory. I said that felt like he didn't care about our game. He got defensive and told me that I was entitled and that he had a life outside of my game and that he didn't owe me anything. The argument got very heated, and he said some pretty hurtful stuff, like that I was empathyless and an entitled a-hole. I kicked him from the campaign and told him not to come back. I still feel a bit guilty, because in a way, it was a failure on my part that he even felt left out. Was I really entitled for demanding a backstory and being stumped that I postponed 2 sessions for his sake, only for him to start a campaign of his own? Well, in my opinion, I don't think OP should feel like they were the a-hole at all here. This player was the one that flipped out on a fellow player and left the session, which is a red flag on its own. But when OP decided to work with this player and just wanted a short backstory in order to involve him more, he couldn't make the time to do that, but had the time to start up his own campaign? Then, when asked about it, he flipped out on OP and insulted them. I will tell OP not to sweat it, and just continue their game without this player, as it sounds like they have a short fuse and a tendency to take things out on other people. That, and the hypocrisy of him not finding the time to provide a short story so OP could stop postponing the game, but having the time to start his own campaign. Though, what do you guys think on this one? Was OP justified in kicking this player? Or do you think they should have given them another chance? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. But with that, let's move on to a story about why it might be a good idea to to let your dungeon master know what is and isn't off limits in regards to your character's backstory. To the post. Why I don't trust dungeon masters who want too much backstory. Submitted to the DnD Doge subreddit by Reddit user Svartall14. So this is ancient history. Back when D&D was in the 3.5 stage, I wanted to play, and I was part of a group that organized games and helped dungeon masters find players and vice versa. So I hear of this guy setting up a game and volunteer to be part of the group. The first meeting was in a bar that caters to RPG gamers, and that was the headquarters of the association. It went well, and the guy approves of our character concepts and gives us directives on how to create them. Point by numbers, allowable alignments, that stuff. He also demands extensive data on the character's backstory, family background, yada yada. Well, being naive, I complied fully, and came to regret it. I don't remember if that SOB did the same to all the other players, or if he specifically picked on me, but that's not important, is it? So, my character was a multi-class warlock, the innate powered guy with the Eldritch Blast, not the pact-driven caster of 5th edition, / necromancer wizard. His background was that he came from a family that was cursed, with the 7th child of a given generation being a warlock. When my character hit adolescence and his abilities manifested, his parents sought to have him taught how to control them. That's when his uncle, the 7th from his parents' generation, arranged for my player character to be sent to be apprenticed with a friend of his. Said friend, far from being a benevolent mentor, turned out to be a very evil necromancer, and my character was made to, quote, learn discipline by becoming his apprentice. Eventually, my character decided he simply could not stomach it and escaped, taking a ship to another continent. And that's where the game starts. Well, let's say that the dungeon master had a very adversarial attitude and put us in impossible situations. Another problem was that he approved one player's idea for a, quote, fun character that was a Goliath barbarian, extremely strong and tough, and impossible to control, that evolved into a frenzied berserker prestige class, at which point, the character became more dangerous to us than to any enemies, which, as I understand, was an integral part of the player's idea of fun. And the dungeon master must have found it fun too, since he did nothing to curb the problem player. Then starts my personal horror story. It turned out that, for whatever reasons the DM decided on, or no reason at all. After all, why give a BBEG motivations to be nasty? My former mentor had decided to go after me. That in itself was unexpected, given the distance, expectable gain for him, and whatnot, but not horror per se. Where it's horrible is when it was revealed that he had actually gone and slaughtered most of my family, and I had, among other things, to destroy and fight the zombies he made from my own parents. He also turned out to have made my beloved kid sister, who wasn't supposed to be evil or have any gifts, into his apprentice, and I had to fight her repeatedly, never managing to either destroy her or make her see the light and come back to reason. In the end, it didn't get to the point where I would have dropped out, though I had thought of it, because the campaign came into permanent hiatus for reasons I forget, after an episode where I was totally nerfed because, of course, my spell book got stolen. I hadn't managed to recover it yet when that game effectively ended, and that's why I'm leery of making too detailed character stories anymore. I just don't want nasties to turn my story against me. Well, OP, if I'm being completely honest, that doesn't sound that bad. I mean, you gave your dungeon master a backstory, and he weaved it into the campaign. I mean, sure, he could have asked you if you would mind taking the story in that direction. But for me, I know that when I personally write a backstory for a character, I give the dungeon master NPCs that would be in my character's background, and tell them to use the backstory as they see fit. That way, as a player, you can be surprised when things like that happen. But I will admit, the whole zombie family thing was a bit much. Though, that is just me. I guess my advice here would be, if there's something in your backstory that you don't want touched in a negative way, let the DM know before the start of the campaign. But with that, it looks like we have time for one more D&D horror story. But this one is about how a horror story was actually avoided. To the post. Stopping a horror story dead in its tracks. By Reddit user Thantos Cow. This took place during COVID. I didn't have a lot of games going, and saw a few people talking tabletop RPGs on a big Discord server that was unrelated to RPGs. Immediately, I went to give some good vibes and advice from a veteran, not that motivated to play though. It became clear that they had trouble organizing, so I took the lead on that. But great news, one of them was an inspiring dungeon master with 2 sessions of experience. I encouraged her to go on, gave a few notes on adventure building, and agreed to be a player. The rest of the team had a full newcomer, and someone with 2 sessions as a player. New people to the hobby, and I could do my best to help while not taking the lead. I was tired and depressed at the time. I proposed some dates, and we agree on a first session for character creation and an introductory gameplay. Then the day came. We had agreed on playing a Lord of the Rings themed game, but not talked about the system yet. This was to be covered in session 0, so in other words, now. And that's when I realized that the DM had brought an old 80s player handbook of a Lord of the Rings game and expected us to create characters through her reading us the book over Discord. That looked horrendous. Not wanting to cancel her idea completely, I quickly searched and found some, legal obviously, PDFs to share and make creation easier. But as the first hours rolled by, the end result was already clear. The energy was dying, and the game was going nowhere. The Dungeon Master half understood the rules of the game. The newcomers weren't picking up anything, and even I had some trouble understanding equipment. Obviously, there would be no time to play after all that, and motivation for another session was going to be hard to find. So I just told them to scrap it and said, creating full characters is going to take us another 2 hours, and after that, we'll be tripping over the rules constantly. I got a basic system, 6 characteristics, simple dice, and basic rules. We'll pick that, and in 30 minutes, we'll be playing. What do you say? After a brief talk, they agreed, and the new players seemed relieved. Indeed, after 30 minutes, the game was going, and the Dungeon Master could start telling her story. She did quite well for a beginner, though the game ran 3 sessions after that and died because lockdown ended, but I kept playing with one of the players. It took me a while to speak up, even though I foresaw the disaster the moment the DM named the game, because I didn't want to overstep her authority when it's already hard to find some confidence. I remembered fondly of screwing around in high school with far too complicated games that my friends and I did not understand. But I think the easier system ended up helping the game massively. We barely needed to talk about the rules after that, and it was all about the story. TLDR. New Dungeon Master wants to start a game with an old complicated RPG. The game almost dies at character creation, and I intervene to change the system on the fly and play. Yeah, when first starting out with tabletop RPGs, it is usually best to use a system that is a bit simple, just to get used to the idea of role-playing. And that Dungeon Master bringing out a Lord of the Rings system from the 80s and trying to convey the rules over Discord chat would not be the way to go. Now, what OP did here was okay in my book. They suggested to use a simple system, but didn't step on the Dungeon Master's toes. They just kinda helped the plane land, so to speak. Though it is a shame that the game ended after 3 sessions, but at least OP is still playing with one of the other players. And hopefully, the rest of the players are still playing tabletop RPGs to this day. But with that, that is all I have for you today. As always, I really do appreciate all of you, and I hope that your games remain horror story free. Until next time.